On today's edition of The Front Row, we are in the downtown studios of Lubbock Public Media in the Arts District, and our special guest is Melody Munitz. She is a member of the American Theater Guild's production of the Addams Family musical that's coming to the Buddy Holly Hall on June 13th through the 15th. That's a Friday, 2 on Saturday performances, and 1 on Sunday of that weekend. And we're so grateful that you're our guest on the show today. Thank you for being with us. Let me begin by asking you just a little bit about you and your journey as an actress and as a performer that has brought you to the Addams Family.
Sure thing. So I've been performing almost my whole life. I saw my first Broadway show just 1 month before my 7th birthday. I saw Mary Poppins on Broadway, and at intermission I pointed to the stage and I said, that's what I'm going to do with my life. And I've been really fortunate that that's been true. I've followed that passion all the way from that age of 6 to I just turned 25 last month, and I am so grateful to just be living out my dream. I grew up in New York. I started performing professionally off Broadway in New York City at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, that sort of thing while I was growing up. Went away to college, studied musical theater and psychology and neuroscience at Penn State for 4 years. Graduated in 2022 and have been out in the professional industry performing ever since.
Wow, what a CV at only 25 years old. That's wonderful. That's great. So you grew up, you said, in New York. So you were exposed to musicals and that kind of thing?
I was so fortunate to have an amazing family and an amazing network of mentors and friends who made the arts accessible, and that's really what it takes. I mean, anyone can have a dream, but it takes the opportunities presenting themselves and having that commitment and having that support to be able to turn those dreams into realities. And so I grew up just about an hour north of New York City in the middle of the woods, pretty different landscape than Texas, and commuting in and out of New York City performing professionally. So I would go to local public school all day, and then my mom would drive me into New York City to make it to my call time and perform off Broadway, and we'd do it all over again the next day.
Wow. When did you realize this was what you'd like to do? When did it hit you that musicals and musical theater was for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it really was that first moment of seeing that first Broadway show. It sounds cliche, but I just remember very vividly sitting in that audience and seeing a young girl around my age playing the role of Jane Banks in Mary Poppins and thinking, kids can do this too, and people who look like me can do this, and this is an option. I mean, this is inevitable. I'd been singing since before I started talking, that sort of thing. And, a lot of kids are that way, and a lot of kids grow out of it.
Yeah.
And some kids don't grow out of it, and I was one of those who didn't grow out of it.
Wonderful. And then you pursued it on in school as well. Penn State, did you say? Yeah.
Yes, Penn State. I double majored in BFA musical theater and got a second degree in psychology with a neuroscience emphasis.
Wow. So you're educated as well. That's really great. So once that all finished, tell us a little bit more about your journey. Obviously, you had these opportunities for off Broadway and then to Carnegie Hall. How did that all fall into place?
Yeah, a lot of that happened before college, actually, before high school graduation. Growing up and being around New York and starting to perform professionally in New York City during my childhood, my adolescence, I got introduced to a lot of wonderful directors and tons of opportunities. And so it kind of started off with this first show at Carnegie Hall, this first concert, and like I think maybe 4 or 5, I think 5 concerts later, I'd been there a bunch, and I think 3 shows at Lincoln Center, and it's amazing because it seems like, wow, what a big world, but ultimately it's pretty small. So, you kind of have a good working relationship with one director. They like you for this project. They bring you in for the next thing. Turns out that's a piece you know or a project you're passionate about. And it really is kind of just one big family and one big network. And of course, there are the stars you look up to and the people whose careers you've idolized since you were young. And then all of a sudden you make it far enough along and you look around and they're your peers. And you get to tell them how much you admire them and how much their work inspired you. So it's really been an honor to kind of be on that journey from the time I was little to the time that I'm here now, making it my whole career.
Right. When did you get hooked up with American Theater Guild?
So actually, I haven't. I mean, I've performed with American Theater Guild in that this tour has been programmed at a bunch of theaters across the country who they kind of are connected with. But ultimately, this tour is produced by Big League Productions, who are the folks who hired me. And they're a production company that produces these Broadway national tours all across the country. And so then folks like American Theater Guild partner with Big League Productions to help bring our show to theaters all across the country.
Right. And so you joined up with the tour, and here you are. Yeah?
Yes.
Great,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
How
It all
long have you been
began pretty
doing?
quickly.
How long have you been doing Wednesday Addams?
So auditions for this production first began all the way back in around last July, late July, early August. It was a couple month rehearsal process. I found out that I got the role September 10th, began rehearsals December 10th. We hit the road to start the national tour on January 10th. And so it's been since the end of last year. We are about halfway through the tour now. We are currently playing our 44th stop out of about 85, and we've done just shy of 100 shows out of just shy of 200 that we'll do by the end of November. So I'm about halfway through my time with Wednesday at this point.
Well, let me ask you this, just to, in terms of like a tour and how you survive on a tour, is it nice to be in one place for 3 days and be able to just, chill a little bit?
It is nice. Yeah, we spend all different lengths of time in different cities. Sometimes we're somewhere for a week or 8 days. Sometimes we're somewhere for one night. And so 3 nights is a great happy medium. You kind of get a chance to see some local spots, maybe eat at some local dives, and you get a chance to really meet the community more so than you do on a one-nighter or a one-off like that. So 3 days, I think, is a perfect amount of time. Of course, I'd love to be there longer, but it's whatever the schedule dictates.
Right, exactly. So the part is Wednesday Addams in the Addams Family, and I'm sure most people know, or have some history with the show The Addams Family, but for someone who doesn't, give us a little overview of the Addams Family and what the show is all about.
Sure thing. So the Addams Family dates back to 1938 when cartoonist Charles Addams started submitting these cartoons to the New Yorker magazine. And they were following these really grim plot lines, these kind of funny, sardonic, gothic stories in just single panel flat cartoons. And this ended up becoming a whole phenomenon. There ended up being a sitcom in the 1960s, a spin-off that kind of gave the characters names and deemed them the Addams Family, with Wednesday, Morticia, Gomez, Lurch, Uncle Fester, Pugsley, Grandmama, all the people we've come to know and adore over all these decades. And then there were just all of these iterations over the last several generations. More TV shows, a bunch of movies, those movies in the 90s with Christina Ricci that people adore, me, myself included, and tons of animated films since then. And of course, now these days, we're kind of in a new era of the Addams Family with this Wednesday show on Netflix, with season 2 coming out in just a couple months during the summer, where Jenna Ortega plays Wednesday. And so we're really in a Wednesday era inside of kind of this large swath of Addams Family admiration that's been going on for a lot of generations before I was even born. So it's really an honor to now step into this story that takes this family that has been adored for so long and puts them inside of a new context for a stage musical.
Right. Now, the Addams Family is not your typical, all-American family, are they?
They are not. It really coincides with kind of that original narrative that was this dark, gothic, grim family. And so if you don't know them, kind of imagine a family who is in this gothic mansion. Everything's falling apart, but they love it and they want it just that way. They're dressed all in black. It's very macabre. Everything is about death, but in a positive way.
Right.
The thoughts and talks of death is what brings them to life. And so they are this very kind of grim, unusual, strange, kind of reclusive family. But what happens in this musical is Wednesday, who in the original context of the family was this kind of young, precocious 6-year-old girl, has now grown up. She's 18 and she's fallen in love. And she's fallen in love with a normal boy from Ohio. And so what happens in the course of this musical is his family from Ohio comes to meet her family for dinner at the Addams Family Mansion in Central Park in New York. And a bunch of hijinks ensue because you take this quote-unquote normal family and this quote-unquote odd family, and they have to figure out, can we get along? Can this marriage and this union work? And without giving too much away, what they really discover is everyone's a bit odd, and what is normal? At the end of the day, it's all about loving and accepting people who are different from us and being authentic to who we really are, and that's the path towards joy. And so that's the journey that our characters get to take in this beautiful story.
All right. So what's it like to play Wednesday Addams? You enjoy it?
It is such an honor. I enjoy it immensely. Honestly, I never thought I'd play Wednesday Addams. My demeanor and hers are pretty different. I'm a little giddier, a little more smiley, definitely much less violent. And so originally when I found out I was going to be playing this role, I was like, this is going to be a heavy lift. I wonder how does Wednesday Addams live in me? Though we are so different, and it's been such a joy to discover the ways that the two of us relate and to bring this character to life, even though she is so different than I am. Our attention to detail, our commitment to love, our joy about authenticity, so many kind of threads tie us together. And so I really found where Wednesday Addams lives in me. So it doesn't feel like putting on a caricature. It feels like snapping into kind of a different part of my persona and being able to amplify her life and her story through my own lived experience.
What's the music like?
The music is so fun. It's written by Andrew Lippa, who has written tons of other adored Broadway shows. The Wild Party, that's another one of my personal favorites, but he's written so many wonderful Broadway scores, and the show is really catchy. I mean, of course, we have our typical sitcom song that always began all the episodes that I'm sure many listeners will remember, that na-na-na-na. That of course shows up in our overture, kind of first moment before the curtain even raises. But then we go on to have a host of wonderful new songs that were created just for this show when it was first premiering on Broadway 15 years ago, back in 2010. And we even have some updates to the music for our production and some updates kind of all around, the jokes, a new ending, that sort of thing. But the music itself is really, really fun. It's catchy. It's full of a lot of jokes. We've got big dance numbers, flashy ensemble coming on and singing all together as a chorus. And a lot of the songs really follow the character's essence. So we have tangos for Gomez and Morticia. We have kind of these silly kind of musical songs for Fester, who comes out with a ukulele, and Wednesday gets to have kind of a pop rock contemporary angsty score because she's in this kind of teenage rebellion phase. And so it really mirrors the journey that the characters are going on. So when you're watching the show and listening to the music, it feels really correct.
Right, sounds great. How many are in the cast? Is it a large cast?
It is a large cast. We have a cast of 22. There are 20 folks on stage, and we have 2 amazing understudies, swings, who are there to cover tracks for when folks go out, and they're in the show all the time. We had both of them on stage last night, in fact. They're rock stars. But we've got a cast of 20. We've got about 10 principal actors who play the family members, and then the family of Wednesday's fiance, his family from Ohio. And then we've got 10 who are these ancestors, who are the Addams family going back generations, who come to stage to help bring the story to life and help this love story come to be.
Right. And the show is appropriate for practically any age, I would imagine, right?
Sure is. There are jokes for all ages. There are lots of jokes that the young folks will love. There's lots of jokes that folks from previous generations will understand and love, especially if they were a fan of the Addams Family sitcom back in the 1960s. But even if they weren't, tons of jokes for all ages, tons of jokes that'll fly over the youngsters' heads that the older folks will appreciate. And it's really a lot of fun for the whole family.
Sounds great. The production is The Addams Family. It's being brought to the Buddy Holly Hall by the American Theater Guild, and performances are Friday through Sunday, June 13th through the 15th. There are 4 performances over those days, and tickets are available at buddyhollyhall.com. Our guest on the front row today is Melody Munitz. Thank you so much for being our guest. I know you're on tour, you're working hard. Thank you for taking the time to carve out some space for us and be our guest on this show today.